Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Emma Lefebvre, and today we're going to be painting a small bouquet of peonies. So let's jump right in. Okay, so today we are just going to be painting a couple peonies. They are my favorite flower, all-time favorite flower. I started out painting them. They're my favorite flower to have, and they're also only in season for a very limited time here, so it's kind of like a little novelty during the spring. If I can get my hands on a bouquet, I'm in absolute heaven, and I just wanted to paint something that made me happy, and that's what we're gonna do today. So I've done a couple peony tutorials, and I think I've done one that was a lot more detailed and tried to make it a little bit more realistic looking, and I've done a bunch that are very loose. And today I just kind of want to play around and experiment. I don't really know where I'm going with this. We're just gonna have fun and play. So I'm gonna be doing some pink peonies because they are my favorite. And let's just jump right in. So I have some permanent rose here. I'm painting on Etchr's cold press watercolor paper. I'm using my Craftamo round brush in a size 10 and my Winsor Newton professional watercolors. So I actually might make it a little bit more corally. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of cadmium yellow, but more pink. And I'm gonna start off with a really light wash. So when I wanna start off with a light wash, I just run my brush in my water a couple times to take off a lot of that pigment. And we're just gonna start off with a really light wash that way. So I think I'm gonna have one that's like more open, and I'm just gonna start even lighter, taking off more of that pigment. I'm gonna start with a big old petal here, taking off even more pigment. I want it a lot lighter. Okay. This one's gonna be really nice and open and fluffy. And I'm just making those edges jagged. Trying to make it a lot lighter. And I'm trying to keep it as wet as I can so we can add some darker color in after. I'm gonna curve these so they're starting to go around. The stamen's gonna be right in here. And so the petals on this side are gonna be a little bit flatter. Do a little petal there, like they're kind of curving up. And try not to make it too perfect. Like don't worry too much about the shape necessarily. It can be loose, like we're going for a loose look here, but we're gonna add a little bit more detail. I'm just adding a bit more like flatter petals on this side. It can be, we're gonna add a bit more detail by adding some darker shadows and stuff. So this is like a really wide open peony flower here. And I'm just leaving little bits of white space in between some of the petals, and that will help create the illusion of separate petals. Okay. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my pigment. So I have darker pigment, more pigment on my brush, and I'm just gonna tap, whoopsie, that might be too much, the base of the petals and the tips. So the top, so we have that really nice light pink color in the middle, and then the dark color is kind of going around the base. Of each petal and the tip. And that's kind of how we're separating some of those petals, if that makes sense. Okay, and because it's still wet, it should bleed like this. If yours is not bleeding like this, it may be your paper if you're using lower quality paper, so don't get all down on yourself. It could be your paper. I don't even know if I like this. I don't know if it's gonna turn out, we'll see. And then I'm just gonna wipe off my brush on my paper towel, and I'm just gonna drag some lines while it's still wet through the peony petals. So dragging some of that dark color from the tip and the base, kind of going with the curve of the petals, but dragging some of that darker color through that really light wash just to create some textured lines. Okay, so I don't have any color on my brush. I'm just using my damp brush to drag some of that color through. Now I'm gonna add a bit more color. Might add a bit darker. Just try not to add too much water on your brush or too much paint. And that's how you'll get these kind of fainter lines. If you have more water on your brush, you could risk pushing that pigment away too much. And that's not what you want. I'm gonna make some of these petals down here a bit darker. Like that. Maybe a little bit of the tips a bit darker. Like that. Okay. And then we will go in the center after with some yellow. Let's try and do another one, maybe one that's a bit more closed. So again, I'm going to take a really, really light wash of this color, and this one is going to be like more closed, like I said. So I'm going to do a more rounded petal. I'm going to do another rounded petal this way, leaving a little bit of white space in between. I'm going to do like a rounded petal up here, and a rounded petal up here, and then just kind of like squiggles in the line in the middle. So it's like really tightly wound petals. So we have petally curvy petals around the sides, and then like these like tiny squiggles in the middle. Then I'm gonna have some falling down, some rounded petals. And I'm touching this one a bit just to get a bit of a bleed. And I'm trying to make those edges of the petals a little bit more jagged. There's construction going on across the street. I apologize. Okay, so we have our really, really light wash. Let's grab a bit more pigment. That's too much yellow. Okay, and I'm gonna make it nice and dark, especially right in the middle. And then at the base, and the tips of the petals again. I'm really trying to be jagged with the edges of those petals. Okay, I'm gonna grab a bit more pink, make it quite pigmented, and really make it a bit darker in the middle here. And then around the edges and the base. And you can even drag some lines to the base with that color. Okay, again, I'm gonna, wait, no, I wanna make it a little darker right here. Okay, I'm gonna wash off my brush, dry it, okay, and then start dragging that dark pigment through the petals to get those lines. Okay, dry your brush, make sure there's not a lot of pigment on your brush or water. Maybe a little bit of pigment. We're also going to do some more lines after. Like that. And I think I'm going to do one more down here. Maybe one that's a bit more closed. I think I need a bit more yellow in this mixture. Okay, and then we're going to do like a little bud, I think. So I'm going to start off with like a round petal shape. This one's going to be pointing more down. So I'm just doing a little bud and then some, not falling, but some petals kind of surrounding it, leaving a little bit of white space. And then we can have the tightly wound petals at the top here. Okay, so we have our really light petals. I'm gonna grab more color. At the base and the tip. So you really want the center of those petals to be nice and light. Like that. Wash and dry off your brush. And then you can take that darker pigment on your dry brush and just kind of make those lines like that. Might even grab some yellow, just throw it in here. Yeah, I'm gonna wait for that to dry to do the yellow center. Okay, so now let's do some leaves. And I'm gonna grab my sap green, just a nice, beautiful, bright green. And I'm gonna grab some dioxazine purple, just to make it look a bit more natural, maybe a little bit of like lemon yellow as well. And we're just gonna do some, actually I'm gonna do the same kind of thing. So I'm taking a lot of that pigment off of my brush and my water cup to make it a nice light wash. Okay. And these don't have to be perfect leaves. Okay, we'll have another one coming this way. And I just keep adding water on my brush to make it lighter and lighter. Okay, and then I'm gonna take more of that pigment. And then again at the bottom and the tip, kind of like around on the leaves. Make it kind of jagged like that, and it just adds some dimension. And if you want, you can even just do like one little line down the center like that. Okay, so let's do it again. Let's do some more down here. You could do like a bunch down here. So I'm just gonna start off with a long stem. Nice and light. Have another petal that way. Just have them curve. And obviously our peony petals are drying, so I'm not touching them to get those bleeds. And I'm gonna go along the stem with this darker color, the base and the tip, and around the sides if you like. It's up to you how you want to do this. Okay, so these ones are a bit lighter. Those actually dried really fast. So I'm just gonna wet it up again to get better bleeds. Like that. I feel like I may need to go in a little bit more, oops, on these ones. Because they're still a little bit wet. Like that. And then we'll do maybe a couple over here. Again, starting off with our really light wash of green. And go back in there with our darker pigment on the stems, the base, the tip, and around the side if you'd like, with that little line down the middle if you'd like. You can do this however you want. Okay. I'm just gonna add a bit more color like that. Okay, now I am gonna make sure that everything is fully dry before I do a bit more detail. Okay, so now I'm gonna use, now that it's dry, I'm gonna use my size 2 Craftamo brush, and I'm just gonna wet it, and I'm gonna start doing a little bit of line detail. Just gonna get it nice and wet, and we're gonna just use the same color. And you can already see using that really light wash and then doing the darker pigment around creates this really beautiful gradient on each petal. So now we're just gonna kind of darken some lines up right here. So you're using the tiniest bit of paint and water. You don't want them like thick lines, and just the really light pressure on your brush to create these kind of lines. You're gonna have some coming from the top. Oops. Okay, you don't have to completely separate the petals. You're just creating these textured lines. Okay, and make sure that your lines curve with the shape of the petal that you're doing. Okay, and try not to use a really, really dark paint. So I just use a really light wash, and because it is another layer, you'll still see it on top, but it's not going to be super, super dark. You're not dipping right into the pigment. You have a nice light wash on your palette already. Okay, if you need to darken it a bit, you definitely can. And I'm just kind of flicking again with the shape of the petal, the curve of that petal. That's really important, because if you have wonky kind of like straight lines, it just doesn't look right. It doesn't give the flower the movement, and the petals the movement that it needs. I'm just also kind of separating some of these petals that are in the front here. Some of them have fallen down. And it's not too big of a deal of how you want to do this. Like, it doesn't have to be perfectly in perspective and realistic. It's up to you how you want to do it. But I'm just adding some of that texture to those petals, which makes it look a little bit more detailed and real, but also has that loose kind of feeling to it. That's kind of the point of this painting. It's not to make it like super realistic. It's loose but detailed to a point. I might even add a little bit more darkness down here. Just gonna blend it out a bit with a dry brush, just grabbing a bit of texture. And then once that's dry, we can do a bit more of those lines over top. Okay, let's do these ones. So the base of the petal. So with this one, you're seeing like the inside of the petal. These ones, because it's a ball, you're seeing the outside of the petal, but they're still from the base to the tip. You're gonna have these little kind of texture lines. They're almost like the veins in the petals. Okay, and it's nice, like here you get those nice blurry ones from when we did wet on wet. And now we're just making some of them a little bit sharper. And don't forget to do the ones from the tip of the petals down as well. Okay, so this petal here is kind of flopped over. So this is the tip and the base is back here. So just curve with the shape of that petal. The tip is up here, base is back there. And then this is the inside of a petal. So this one has kind of flopped open. If it helps to look at some sort of reference photo, you can definitely do that too. And I'm just gonna actually grab some straight pink pigment and just do some sharper lines in the middle here, like that. Okay, and then this one, light wash from the base. Like that. Okay, so what we can do is we can do something similar to the leaves. If you want to leave them like this, you can. If you want to sharpen them up kind of too, like we did here, we can do that. Let's try. I actually haven't tried, so I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not, but let's see. So I'm gonna do a sharper line down the middle. So we can just do some of those veins, just really lightly. Some veins coming down either side. And I'm curving those veins to give the leaf some movement. Okay. Yeah, I like that. Ooh. My hand was shaky there. Like that. And then last but not least, we're gonna do the center kind of stamen here, which is like a bright yellow and like quite bushy. So I'm just grabbing some cadmium yellow and I'm just going to layer on this yellow. These little lines. They kind of curve. And I also might use a white ink pen after. Let me see how bright this looks. Actually, let's see if we can use some lemon yellow. It's pretty green, but let me see if that would help it show up a bit more. It's a bit too greeny. I might use a white ink pen after. Let me see. Oops. Okay, well, we'll leave it like that and we'll let that center dry, and then we can come back in and see if there's anything else we want to do to make it a little bit more detailed. Okay, so actually as that center stamen dried, it dried a little darker and you can kind of see it's a bit more detailed. So I don't know if I'm going to touch it just yet, but I'm going to grab some more pink here, a bit more yellow, and just do some more. I feel like it needs a bit more yellow. I may have messed this one up, but that's okay. It happens. You can always add a little bit of green to your pink to kind of mute it, to make a bit of a shadow color. There we go. Like that. Okay, and then what I was thinking was using my white gel pen to kind of go around little bits of the stamen to make it stand out a bit more, just especially on top of this pink. So I'm just doing like little lines around some of those bits, which I think this is actually working, just to separate them a bit. Like that. And I think that works nicely. I feel like there's a bit more shadow I could add to this just to separate some of the flowers too. So like I said, I'm gonna add a bit of green to my pink here, and that creates a bit of a shadow color. And I'm just gonna go around this petal like that, wash off my brush, dry it, and then blend this out. So it just creates a bit of darkness behind that flower. Add a bit more, oops, a bit more shadow. So it makes this flower in the front really stand out. Like that. Okay, and then I'm just gonna wash off my brush, dry it, and I'm just gonna drag some of that darker color out like that. And then I'm gonna do the same to this one. So this petal is behind. Wash and dry off your brush and then just blend it out a bit. Same with this one. There would be a bit of a shadow cast. Let's add a bit more color. You can even add some of this darker color to the base of some of those petals. Maybe the center a bit more. Then just wash and dry off your brush and just blend it out. Wash, dry off your brush, blend it out. And I think it just helps create a little bit of depth. Like that. And there you go. Thank you all so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram for even more. Have a great day, guys. Bye.